Good afternoon, all colleagues. I'm really pleased to welcome you to the brokerage session of the Industry for a Clear and Circular Economy. We have, together with my co-host Stefania and Andrea, we've decided that we split this up into two sessions so that we do topic 3.1 first, and then we will do topic 3.2 a little bit later, starting at 5 o'clock. So I hope this is okay for everyone. And in order to start the whole thing, I would like to present a presentation on topic number 1. And let me see, I'll just take this into full. The topic, closing the carbon cycle in industry, is supposed to demonstrate the industrial feasibility of catalytic routes for sustainable alternatives to fossil fuels or fossil resources. It's fully in line with the European Green Deal that President von der Leyen presented earlier this year. And the aim of the proposal is actually to contribute towards achieving the climate and environmental related challenges and targets of 55% greenhouse gas reduction by 2030, and hopefully to gain full climate neutrality by 2050, as well as to implement all the circularity objectives which are associated to this. I think it goes without saying that we cannot do this without pulling on the same string, all of us, but especially the energy-intensive industry is incredibly important to be able to achieve this. And the reason being that the process industry and the energy-intensive industry, they are simply the largest overall point sources of greenhouse gas emissions in Europe. And they account for approximately 20% of all greenhouse gases when you include everything that is associated with making these products. The industry that we're talking about is incredibly heavy dependent on fossil resources since basically 100 years when all this started, both to produce the basic material and to the value-added products that we all need for our modern society and which we simply cannot live without. The problem for the industry is they cannot change their production systems very easily because they've got trillions of euros in infrastructure investments that need to be changed, and that takes years to implement. So we actually need viable solutions to the problems without risking the millions of European jobs that depends on this process industry. And at the same time, we would like to try and see if we can create new job opportunities. And if you are in doubt, the process industry, as I said, depends, or millions of jobs depend on this. And we're actually talking about 7 million real jobs in the industry itself, but also in the associated industries, service branches, and so on and so forth. What we're trying to do with this proposal is that we're looking towards new catalytic systems that are in conjunction with renewable energy. That means, for instance, solar, wind, hydropower, and that it should facilitate the transformation of CO2 into feedstock, fuel, and chemicals, and thereby replace the fossil resources that we're using today. So how can catalysis help with this? Well, it can help by increasing the energy efficiency of the transformation. And that, of course, is, in terms of physical chemistry, the most important part of a catalyst. But the aim here is to reuse large industrial point sources of CO2. And that can be done by combining different sectors through industrial symbiosis. Thereby, we reduce the imports of fossil resources and we help the circularity. At the same time, it's important to point out that it's necessary to increase or improve the flexibility in storage in high-density energy carriers, simply because the resources that we are depending on here, renewable resources, they are off and on. So we need to have a much, much higher flexibility in storage of energy. But just to get back to what is catalysis and how can catalysis actually help society, I've taken an old example of a catalyst that can show incredibly or how the incredible effect of catalysis is actually on society. We tend not to think about catalysis as process parts, but it's actually important for the society. And here I've given you an example of the ammonia synthesis. It was a catalyst that was developed around 1910, and it actually contributed to initiate the Industrial Revolution. And if you look at the graph, which is in the picture, you can actually see that the world population and the production of fertilizer is fully linked. I think that's the only example I have where you have such a strong correlation with this. And of course, it's because the fertilizer is linked to the food production, and therefore also to us being able to get food on the table. So the problem with this production is that it's one of the biggest productions or chemical productions in the world. It is actually the largest single chemical process that is running, with approximately 160 million tons per year. The problem is that it causes approximately 1.5% of the total global greenhouse gas emissions because it uses fossil fuels. And that means that we need to change these systems, not only this system, but also all the other systems. So you can see that it is very important to look at the catalyst as a fundamental thing for changing industrial processes. And of course, we hope that the new system for CO2 conversion can be equally successful. In concrete terms, what impact do we actually want to achieve? Well, we want to see that there is a demonstration of the technology in near industrial scale, which means transforming more than 4,000 tons of CO2 into feedstock fuels and chemicals on a yearly basis. And that's not a very small task. As a matter of fact, it's approximately 10 times what is currently possible today. So we have a really ambitious target here. We also want to include all aspects of the related industrial value chain and thereby support Europe's position as a global leader in these process industries. We would hope that the primary use of industrial infrastructure would be the one which is already running, because then we can also limit the capital expenditure. And these processes, in order not to be non-sustainable, they should be based on detailed techno-economic and life cycle assessment considerations. And thereby we should also rule out to use, for instance, steam reforming processes as hydrogen sources for the transformation. We hope to arrive at TRL 7 within 5 years from the project, and eventually the project should lead to full-scale industrial projects, which of course are financed outside the European Framework Program by other means, like EU Invest, the member states, the industry itself, or things like the climate funds, which is, for instance, like near 400. Further impact that we would like to see is demonstrated here on this slide. And in essence, what we want to do is also to show that it's possible to reduce the industrial emissions by 200 megatons by 2050. This is approximately a third of all greenhouse gas emissions done by the process industry. And of course, this is not enough, but we cannot do more using the point sources. Then we would have to go further than that. We aim to have affordable and highly efficient production, storage, and distribution of renewable energy carriers, and that, of course, includes also the fuels and the hydrogen. We, at the same time, would like to see that there is an indirect improvement of the air quality and the health effect through the filtering of the flue gas emissions from the last point sources. And I think that nearly goes by itself. If you filter all the emission sources through membranes and other means, then of course you avoid having large particulate matter emissions into the air, which is causing problems for the air pollution in general. In this process, it's necessary to address all the financial and also the regulatory and associated environmental aspects, and thereby try to contribute to industrial circularity. And we hope that we can do direct transformation of CO2 from industrial emissions, because that's actually possible. This is not possible without fostering some kind of cross-sectorial European innovation ecosystem that can deploy all the technology which is invented inside this project. And we also like to see that there is a reach out towards the rest of the society, and that this is done in all transparency. And then we should not forget that we are depending on new young scientists and training of people in the factories, and we should not forget about this. So we need new young scientists trained in these kind of technologies. So now the bad part of the proposal. What do we not foresee in this proposal? Well, we definitely do not foresee small projects. We are looking at a quasi-full-scale demonstration of the potential, and therefore small projects which we've had over the last 10 years are simply not in place here. We are really looking for big projects and big projects only. And while direct air capture has been talked a lot about, and it seems very attractive, and it's also not excluded from the proposal, it's actually unlikely that it would be implemented already now at the scale we are talking about, simply because just the concentration of CO2 alone would lower the efficiency by something on the order of 5 to 10%. And the same goes a little bit for biotechnological solutions, because the scale that we are foreseeing of the direct industrial demonstrations is a little bit unlikely to allow this to be integrated into the processes. But again, it is not, it is not excluded from the actual proposal. So if you have good ideas to this and you can put everything into a proposal, that would be all fine with us. For tomorrow, and now I'm going a little bit out of the actual presentation of the topic, but tomorrow there'll be an extension of this brokerage event as a pitching event, and that will be from 9 to 10:45 with Industry for a Clean and a Circular Economy. And we will try to do the first part from 9 to 10, focusing on the circular carbon circle in industry. But in general, we will take all the questions that are coming to this pitching session. And you can see the time slots, even though I think it's a little bit garbled on this slide. We have time slots available from 19:13 and until 9:37. And if you want to have a pitching session and want to be sure that you have your spot, please contact either me or Ulrik Schmidt, as you can see on the screen. I think with that, I conclude the presentation of the topic. And what we actually foresee here is that we can take really cost-effective innovation, connect with the industry, produce flexible energy storage, and then support our climate. And then in the end, we should deliver clean products. And with that, I would like to start the questions and answer sessions. So I will go out of this if I can. And then I would ask you to put your questions in the chat box, so that we will take your questions, or you can raise your hand in the Q&A session so that we can see who would like to come in with a question. I can see the Etienne Huville, who is asking what is the difference between big and small projects. Well, of course, this is a scale problem. Small projects are what we have had in the past, say R&I projects or even innovation action projects up to, say, 10 million euros. What we're looking for in this topic is actually projects that combined has a European funding of approximately 40 million euros. So it's not a small project. Yes, the presentation will be available after this session, and I think that it's already publicly available for you to download. Any other questions? I can see that there is a question from Gabriele in terms of how important is it to address the full value chain. I think that if you are dealing with a project as large as this one, you have to have all the elements of the full value chain embedded. That goes all the way from the fundamental research, the use of the data, to the actual practical demonstration in an industrial environment. So it should be everyone included. I'm not going to tell you here exactly how you should put consortia together and which stakeholders are the most important. But I think that it's up to you in the proposals to demonstrate that you have the full value chain available in the proposal. Then there's a question from Anonymous here. Can big projects consist of several small projects? I think that in reality, such a big project will always consist of a number of smaller projects, simply because it will be dealt up in work packages. And as you have a very big project here, it's likely that these work packages will actually be projects size already in themselves. Then there was a question from Hans Van. How do you see the link between the constant CO2 emissions from the industry and the intermittency in renewable electricity? This is the reason that we need to have the storage capacity, and that storage is an integral part of this whole project. Because if you do not have the storage capacity, then you would simply not be able to do these things. When we are talking about having much higher degree of renewable energy use in general, then we simply need to have that storage capacity. And batteries and fuel cells and even the lakes that we have available for hydroelectric power is not enough to be able to deal with this. We're talking about up to 20% of the total energy that we are using in Europe, and we have to find other means of doing that. And the only thing that is available at the moment is actually chemical industry, which is big enough. Let me see.
Sorry.
Yeah.
You can go in the Q&A section.
Okay.
Under the published one, you will find a lot of questions. Thank you.
Okay, then I will try and take them from the start. The email addresses again. Ulrich or Alessia, could you put our email addresses up into the chat box so that people can get them again? I can see Gabriele is asking, can a mix between demonstration elements in TRL 7 and others which are investigated at lower TRL, is that possible? Yes, of course. I mean, we do not foresee that everything will become TRL at the same time. we will be linking also to future projects inside this field, and therefore we need to sort of bootstrap the whole area. That goes with interaction with artificial intelligence, fundamental treatment of materials, new catalytic systems that are not presently at TRL 7, and then we will have to build this up over years. This project is supposed to give us a future demonstration site or capability that we can use in other projects as well. That's the aim. Otherwise, we would not put up to 80 million euros available just for a single topic like this. Then I can see that there is a question to topic 3B, and I will leave that to the colleagues in the other units, and that the session that will start here in about 40 minutes. I can see that there is another Cecilia Lindström is asking about the territorial cluster, and I think that's also for the other topic. But just to say that regional collaboration in a project like we've just, or that I've just presented now, is very important, because it is about industrial symbiosis, and it's unlikely that you would find all the elements in one very close geographical region. So therefore, it would be best if we could actually associate or integrate different regions for doing these kind of things. Then there's a question from Acel Doranova. Should the focus be on more industrial value chains? I think that in this area, we are focusing mainly on the industrial value chains. Of course, they should also be linked to societal value chains, because energy is omnipresent, and therefore they need to have a link, and that also goes with other resources that could go into this project. But primarily, we want to focus on the industrial value chains first and foremost, and then possibly to combine this with other links in the society. Another question for Green Deal 2. Sorry for not saying anything. I'm trying to scroll down the questions. And I think that most of the questions here are from our colleagues in topic 3.2. There's a last call now. Question now. The call gives the impression that fuel should be included in every case, and intermediate, for example. I think that it's, of course, up to the proposers to decide what should be included in the actual proposal. But if we're looking at things like the flexibility in energy storage, it's nearly inevitable that fuels in one way or another will be involved in this proposal. But you can easily have a project that focuses on making an intermediate mainly, because it can be used either as a fuel directly in the chemical industry, or it can be used in some of the other process industries. So I think that it's up to you to determine how should this be done in the best possible way, and convince the experts that will be doing the evaluation that your proposal is indeed the best ones.
Sorry, Søren, it's me again. There are other questions under the tab published.
Okay. So I will start those again from the start. Does catalysis only refer to chemical catalysis? No, actually it doesn't. Biocatalysis is also permissible, as I also said in my second last slide. There is no hindrance in terms of using biocatalysis for this. The only problem that you're going to face is that you will be taking the flue gas emissions from point sources, which likely will be either hot or containing other kinds of elements that may be poisoning the biocatalyst. But if you can accommodate that, there is no limitations on that. So what is the time frame? Yes, the question by Amin Nasiri is 40 million euros per project. Yes, indeed, that is the budget envelope that we are foreseeing as the Commission funding for a single project. And we foresee that there will be 2 projects funded because we have a total of 80 million euros available. So the time frame that Lara Valentin is asking for is by around 2030. I think that we are already so far that we can do quite a lot of processes that are approaching around between 500 and 1,000 tons per year. And we should increase that one to 4,000 tons per year. And it doesn't really matter what it is that it comes into. As I said, intermediates, it can be chemicals, it can be fuels directly. But I think that at the end of the day, the product that comes out of this has to have a value which is significant enough to make this also economically viable. And that is a very important element of this. And yes, the end of the project is not in 2030, but it should foresee that these things can be implemented fully by 2030. If we can do it before, that's great. If not, then we will just have to wait until we're getting there. It says from Benjamin Varese, this area will only be related to carbon capture and sequestration, or would it also include projects related to waste recycling? I actually do not see this as an only carbon capture and sequestration, because that's not the aim of this, to be able to only sequester the CO2 coming from the flue gas emissions. Then it would just cost money. And we would take CO2 out of the air, which is already nice. But as I just said a minute ago, I think we want to create projects or products that has an inbuilt value so that we can make the whole thing economically viable. It can include all kinds of waste. It can include waste that are in the flue gases, or it could embed waste that comes from elsewhere in, for instance, the industry. So we are not making limitations on that. And yes, 40 million euros is a really high budget for TRL7. I think that it's also because it's a very complex project, and that we foresee that this includes elements from different regions. Lots of the funding will probably go into infrastructure as well as the normal research that is being done. So it is a really big project, but we know from experience that infrastructure changes, both in the chemical industry of the scale we are talking here, or in the steel industry, or in the cement industry, or aluminium for that sake, are really, really expensive. So we are going to have the need for big industrial investments as part of this, including into the 40 million euros that we are talking about. I'm not sure I understood Maya about the CO2 emissions reduction. I think that CO2 emission reduction is part of this topic, but of course the circular economy is equally a part of this whole thing. It should go hand in hand to be able to achieve the goal of not only getting a more circular economy in Europe, but also being able to produce value added for the citizens. Then Ute Karl is asking about material cycles as rare earth. And of course, all these things can be linked up into this. It's clear that the catalysts themselves, to a large degree, will also, at least initially, contain rare earths, and we have to be able to recycle those. And therefore, it would be very beneficial to have a circular use of these catalysts. And I think that it's actually it's written in the topic that it should be a part of this. Then Andrea is asking, still on the scale of the projects, will the grant cover the innovation part only, or all the actual costs of installment of infrastructure are eligible? There are no limitations on this. We, of course, will look, and the experts will look at this to get the best value for money for the European funding. And therefore, it's up to you to determine how you can best make the mix so that it's presentable to the experts. From Freddy Rios, who asks, should the projects address all of these imposed impacts? I think that, of course, it'll be very difficult to address absolutely all of the proposed impacts. But I think that, again, it's up to you to convince the experts that your proposal is the one that best fits all the possible elements within this whole proposal. And as we already spoke about, 40 million euros is a lot of money. So I think that we should be able to include all these elements. And of course, if there are elements in this that you think that you cannot fulfill, just because it sort of contradicts the rest of the project, then my recommendation to you would be to include this in the argumentation inside the proposal so that the experts understand why you have not taken this or that element as part of the proposal. And Lara Valentin is asking, can a proposal tackle different technologies, or should we focus on one catalytic conversion? Again, it's up to the proposal to determine this. I think it's likely that a proposal would tackle different technologies. We're looking at different TRL levels. We're looking at different industries, and we're also looking at different solutions. So it's likely that we are talking about different technologies in the catalytic conversions. Also because in the future, we would like to have upscaling of further ideas based on this demonstration plant. Amin Nasri asks, should the whole value chain be considered for the project? That means CO2 valorization, capture, storage, transport, and conversion. No, it's a system integration, and therefore it should address all the elements here. I think I've already addressed the next question. Then Dirk van Genuchten is asking, it was indicated use primary current industrial infrastructure, thereby limiting capital expenditure. I think that we already know about industrial plants that is able to do this, or industrial projects where this is indeed possible. I know of some in Germany. I also know of some in the Netherlands. but it's not up for me to decide where and how this is going to be put together. But definitely we do have a geographical spread of plants that would be able to integrate these things, both, as I said, both in Germany and Netherlands, I think even in Belgium, or in Spain, probably also in France. So I think that we have enough capacity to actually implement this project all over Europe. And George is asking, how many demo cases do you expect per project? Just one large one, sorry, or or several? I think that again, it's up to you. Of course, a project like this will consist of many elements, which will be at different TRL stages, and possibly also several demonstrators. Of course, it's also up to the proposers to determine exactly how you do this. So it's fully up to you to convince the experts about this. But there are no real limitations. Of course, I think we would all like to see one really big demonstrator, because like everyone else, we also have a need to be able to demonstrate this also in societal terms, so that people can see what is it actually that we are spending the money on. So I think that one really big demonstrator would definitely be an asset for the project. I have to say that of course I'm doing this in real time now, and I don't have a lot of time to think about my answers. So I hope you are going to bear with me and use the actual call text as the basis for your proposal, rather than perhaps a mistake in what I'm saying right now, because as everyone else, I'm also just human. It's, now I see, it's, let me just see. Lara Valentine is asking, the topic says the production of fuels and chemicals. I think that it's up to the proposers to determine whether it should address both of these things or just one of them. I think that in all likelihood, it would address both in one way or the other. But again, it can be an intermediate thing, like a business-to-business thing, which is used between the main industries. But it's up to the proposers to determine this. Then Matthew Willens is asking how to select the industrial process to focus on. Should the focus be on those projects with the largest industrial CO2 reduction potential? Again, it's up to you. I think that it would be very nice to look at the process with the largest industrial CO2 reduction potentials. Some of them, I think we already know. If we take CO2 from flue gas, either from cement production or from the steel industry, and making methanol out of that, it's sort of being done already at a relatively high scale. So that's at least one of them. But I don't have a golden bullet to how you should determine which ones to focus on, but I definitely think that the large ones would be the ones to focus on, or those with the highest potential for the future. Frederius is asking, are there any co-funding targets considered in this call? I think that I already indicated that in one of the last slides, that we are foreseeing this to go into full industrial scale production later on. And it would be beneficial if the projects can come with co-funds themselves to make sure that we have a longevity of these projects which go past the 5 years we're talking about now. And it's likely, if we are talking about large industrial infrastructure that goes into this, that some of the industries, they will put these things available at low cost, or at least very reduced cost to be able to do these things. Irene is asking, is it possible to present a new technology with scale-up possibilities in biorefinery processes, such as production of bio-based value-added chemicals like methyl tetrahydrofurane or something like that? I definitely think that it's possible, but I mean, you have to look at the TRL levels, where we start and where we're supposed to end. So if you have a process that fits the bill, which is bio-based and can be done in a biorefinery, then there is no problem to use that for instance, tetrahydrofurane-based processes. I think that in some cases it may be actually desirable to at least have these in consideration, because I think our society is going more towards bio-based processes nowadays, and we would want to reuse as many of the waste products that are available around us. But it's not exclusive. As I said before, we are open to all different possibilities. The specifications for the fuels, I think that there is only one specification which is mentioned in the call, and now I just scroll down at the call itself, because it says in the call that there should be a significant reduction of the CO2 emissions, around 200 megatons per year by 2050, with the potential to achieve a carbon intensity below 20 grams of CO2 equivalent per megajoule. That's the only specification that we have directly of technical nature in this. Otherwise, it's up to you to determine how this should be done. So we are nearing the end of this session, and we're also nearing the end of my voice, I can hear. So I will try and take the very last questions. Is a technology that has reached proof of concept, TRL5, with flue gases from one sector be adapted and scaled up in a project for another sector, e.g. different flue gases? Yes, I think that's definitely permissible inside the project. And again, it's up to you to determine how you want to put this project together. We prefer not to do this. I have, of course, I've been in this business for a long time, and I have some ideas about this, but I'm not the one that evaluates the proposals. We have external experts to do that, and I can guarantee that they know what they're doing. Any last minute questions? Anything from my co-moderators? Something that I have forgotten to say? That seems not to be the case. In which case, I would invite you to join the session with my colleagues, Andrea and Stefania, from 5 o'clock, and they will address the demonstration of territorial system. That means the topic 3.2, starting at 5. Thank you very much for your attention, and I wish you all the best for the proposals, and we will be there to help you. So if you have questions, use your national contact points. They're the first port of call, and then we will of course help if there are any other questions that needs to be answered. Now over to you, Stefania.
I hope you enjoyed the topic presentation of Søren, and perhaps I would come back to one of the questions that was raised already in the chat after the presentation of Andrea. So Thank you, Andrea. So the floor is yours.
Yeah, thank you. So if it's fine with everyone, we can start. So having more time for questions. I hope you can hear me and see me. So basically, I'm going to present now the second topic of this call area 3, which is called demonstration of systemic solutions for the territorial deployment of the circular economy. My name is Andrea Correggi, and I'm working for the European Commission DG Research Innovation, and the unit is called Circular Economy and Bio-Based System. So just to give you a little bit of policy framework for where this topic is included, is of course included in the European Green Deal, but is also connected to other key policy and legislation priority in the EU, started from the new European Circular Economy Action Plan, which was published last March. And especially this topic is really addressing and really try to implement the part of the Circular Economy Action Plan related to territorial aspects of the circular economy. It also relates to the European Bioeconomy Strategy. The updated version was published in 2018. And if you see the change, or if you want improvement from the previous Bioeconomy Strategy 2012 and the new one 2018, you see a strong focus on a bioeconomy which is sustainable, circular, and then that can also implement it inter alia through local actions. When I say local, is at the regional and local scale. And again, this topic is targeting this area. And of course, it's contributing also to the implementation of the European Industrial Strategy. So just this slide, just to tell you that the policy framework that this topic wants to participate is really significant and is really, let's say, supporting the implementation to key policy area in the EU. But then now, just to give you a little bit of background where this topic is coming from. Well, RTD started in 2015, a quite big file, which internally we consider called as Urban Circular Bioeconomy. The scope of this file that contains several research innovation actions is really to focus on how in Europe and beyond Europe we can extract value from local bioresources, from urban biowaste, including green waste, food waste, but also wastewater sludge. And how to valorize means how I can turn through specific value chains these bioresources at the local level into innovative bio-based products. Innovative bio-based products, for example, like bio-based chemicals, bio-based feed ingredients even, bio-based nutrients, fertilizer, plastics. Just to say that all this file is really looking to the way to valorize bio-waste and wastewater sludge, not only in compost and biogas, but do a little bit more. We started, of course, with internal primary and secondary research to see a little bit what are the technologies available there, how far they are from the lab to the commercial level. We analyze also the different level of development, if you want, to how cities in Europe can valorize their bioresources. What are the cities with a nice waste management scheme, bio-waste management scheme? What are the products that they produce? What is the business model behind? And according to this research, then we identify what the Commission can do from the research point of view, and with Horizon 2020 and other funds. So we started having, under Horizon 2020 and the bio-based industry joint undertaking, specific call for proposals and tenders for really demonstrating how urban circular bioeconomy can be implemented at the local level. Another type of projects that the Commission also consider is the point 3, this project development assistance, which is normally a supporting scheme, which is very, let's say, present at the EU level, also in Horizon 2020, for energy and climate policy. The point is like how to translate it also to the circular bioeconomy. So how to translate it to something which is not is contributing to climate mitigation, but not through the energy path only, but also to the circular, to the bioeconomy path. And the project development system means I have a territory with a circular idea for bioresources, how to translate this idea, this plan into concrete investment, into concrete bankable investment if possible. Then, of course, also there was the identification of at the regulatory level, at the EU level, what are the regulatory obstacles and drivers, and also how to identify these regulatory drivers and obstacles at the article level in the EU. The last point is the Circular City Funding Guide, which is a quite interesting work implemented in the context of the Urban Agenda Partnership on Circular Economy. And is a website where you can find different type of instruments, financial instruments, but also different example of financial instruments that specific territories in Europe are using to improve their circularity. For example, you can find what Milan is doing, what the Flanders here in Belgium are doing for increasing their circularity, or Maribor in Slovenia. So you don't have only the classification of funds, but you also have a concrete example. All these points you can find in the presentation, the hyperlink, so you can find more information. Now, that was a little bit long, the policy background, but just to let you know where this topic is coming from a file that was focusing at the beginning only on the bioeconomy side of the circular economy at the local level. And today, this file has been enhanced to a wider initiative, which is quite new. It's called Circular Cities and Regions Initiative. It's part of the new Circular Economy Action Plan. And the aim of this initiative is really to support the implementation of circular economy solution at the local and regional scale. I underline here the word of implementation. So it's really try to focus on move from a circular idea to concrete projects, investment, demonstration, and replication of the circular solution. And the CCRI will be implemented in the coming months. Here below, you can find the link to the available information so far that are online in the GRTD website. Then why this strong focus at the local and regional scale, especially for circular economy? Well, this topic is presenting a focus, a regional, a local focus, because considers the regional scale, the local scale, is a suitable area for closing resource loops, for also creating sustainable circular ecosystem, but also for considering how innovation schemes that can be implemented at the local level, really community-based, can be demonstrated. Because what this topic tries to do is really to try to see the circular economy, let's say, not only from, I would say, the classical environmental economic perspective only, but also to have an entire circular economy that is sustainable, economically speaking, and from the environmental point of view, is regenerative, for example, for agriculture, the cycle of nutrients, that's one example, but also is inclusive and just. So with this topic, we really try to touch also an omnicomprehensive set of benefits that the circular economy can do at the local level, really focus on the demonstration of concrete solutions. Now, what are the challenges that this topic is somehow addressing? Well, starting from this analysis that we, of course, every year we do, we identify together with the, of course, other DGs, with other institutions, like for example, with the EIB, European Investment Bank, with the OECD, with other actors. Well, we saw a significant engagement and activities on circular economy carried out or planned by local authorities, regional authorities, but also the private sector, of course, industry, including SMEs, businesses. However, this topic still feels that there is still the need to demonstrate and replicate this systemic solution at the territorial level, and especially also to consider that, well, the idea just to apply the circular economy principle not only to the I would say, classical waste and water sector or wastewater sector, but really try to apply the circular concept beyond this sector, not only in this sector. For example, the topic includes some example, a reference, for example, to the new circular economy action plan, key product value chains. That includes batteries and vehicles, electronics and ICT, packaging, plastics, textile, construction and buildings, food, water, nutrients. So just to say that a focus is beyond the classical waste and wastewater sector. Now, the scope of the topic, of course, if you read the text, is quite long. We try to be as much as possible flexible, but also clear. And I think these 3 points are quite important to specify, because also according to the question that we already received. Point 1 is that each proposal is expected to implement and demonstrate circular systemic solution in one circular territorial cluster. So one proposal, one territorial cluster. What is a territorial cluster? In this definition, in this topic, the definition of a territorial cluster is, if you want, a socio-economic and environmental system, which is composed, I would say, of all relevant actors and dimensions to implement, demonstrate, and facilitate the replication of one circular systemic solution, at least one circular systemic solution per cluster. What is a systemic solution in this context? Is a cross-sectoral demonstration project for the deployment of a territorial circular economy at the regional and local scale. So these 3 definitions, I think, are answering at least the question that we received so far, but then of course we can discuss. Now, let's go to the this topic is expected in terms of impact. Well, there are 7, again, quite broad and at the same time clear expected impact. Starting from the need to really demonstrate the decoupling of the economic and human activities from the consumption of the finite resources and having a positive environmental impact, starting from the greenhouse gas emissions. So basically, it's a way to move from a linear economy to a circular one and guarantee that this is producing wealth in a sustainable way, also from a climate point of view. So we want to have this transition, ensure that this transition towards a circular economy is also climate neutral and is sustainable. The second expected impact is, of course, focusing on sustainability and the circularity of what are the resources in one territorial cluster, in a certain territory. So basically, this means having a strong focus on natural ecosystem, the management, but also the valorization of local resources. The third expected impact is looking a little bit to the economic and business side of the story. Circular economy solutions should really provide business opportunities and also maybe arriving to a quite significant and sound pipeline of investment projects. But also, there's the other expected impact. We said that this topic is aiming to a circular economy that is sustainable, regenerative, inclusive, and just. So the role of citizens, all local stakeholders, is crucial, and their participation is crucial in the demonstration of systemic solution. And going back to inclusive and just, of course, the creation of jobs in the short and medium term should be positive in each demonstration. And that's quite crucial because the topic underlined the importance that the transition towards a linear economy to a circular one then has to be positive in terms of jobs, and not waiting too much to have new jobs, but also try to really to provide new jobs to keep or to transform the existing one in the short and medium term. Then for the other expected impact, I don't know if you can see the slide.
Yes, we can see the slide.
You can see the slide, good. So basically, we focus on the knowledge. Basically, here is really a way to having a limited number of course of demonstration of territorial cluster that are try to implement and demonstrate circular solution. But here the transfer of knowledge is crucial. It's crucial between the projects, between the proposals, but also it's crucial to transfer this knowledge about concrete demonstration also beyond the limited and important group of territorial cluster and proposal involved in this topic. And the last point is also important because that's, in my opinion, is like the challenge, but at the same time, the beauty of really acting at the local level, focusing at the regional local scale, but with the mentality that is also, you know, national level, international level, European level. And that's a little bit what we are trying to do with this topic. So here, the scope is I really try to make easier to facilitate the replication, also the scalability and visibility of concrete systemic solution. That's the scope also of the topic. But the philosophy is if I'm able to demonstrate a circular solution in territory A, B, and C, then other territories can consider this demonstration and try to translate them in their territory. Of course, it's not easy, but it's feasible. And this multiplication effect is really the core of this topic. So in a way that I'm focusing, of course, at the local and regional scale, but if I focus, for example, the European Green Deal philosophy or focus at the local level, I can multiplicate these benefits until reaching the regional level, the national level, the European one, and the international one. Then the other important point, and as I referred to the additional provision of this topic, is, as we said, the link with the CCRI, with the Circular Cities and Regions Initiative. This topic is the first instrument is published about this initiative, and the idea is just really to help the implementation of this initiative, providing policymaker and decision maker with concrete example of local circular solution. And the cooperation with the CCRI should be carried out through 3 points. Point one, through the cooperation between the proposals under this topic. Point two, also the cooperation with the initiative itself, with the Circular Cities and Regions Initiative, in terms of sharing when it's feasible, when it's relevant, specific knowledge and experience implemented by each territorial cluster, by each systemic solution. Try to share this info not only among the projects part of this topic, but also with the CCRI for further, dissemination and awareness raising with other sector, with other actors beyond this topic. And last point, of course, is try to participate to the CCRI events. The last point, I leave you with some useful links. So the one for the Circular Cities and Regions Initiative, the European Green Deal, the link to the Circular Economy Action Plan, and to the Bioeconomy Strategy, and to the European Industrial Strategy. So thank you. Now, I guess if Stefanie is fine for you, we can go through potential questions.
Yes, just to introduce myself, I'm Stefania Rocca, and I work in EASME, one of the executive agency of the European Commission, and we will be in charge of the implementation aspects related to this topic in terms of coordinating and managing the evaluation process, as well as on the monitoring of the funded projects. So I'm happy to be here and to support Andrea with the question and answer. I would like just to go back to one of the questions that was raised during the presentation of Soren, and it is about the eligibility conditions. So it is asked if in this topic, does the mandatory 3 member states participation remain? and the answer is yes. This is because it's an innovation action under the Horizon 2020, and as it applies for all the innovation actions, so it is requested that proposal include at least 3 legal entities. Each must be established in 3 different member states or Horizon 2020 associated countries. So yes, you have to consider at least 3 participants from these different member states or associated country. Then we received a lot of questions, mainly related to the topic text. If you want, Andrea, I can read them. We can go through them one by one.
Yeah, I would say.
So, the first question is about, should the chosen cluster be located in a single European member states, or should it be located in several different member states?
Yeah, let's say this one. Thanks, Stefania. We leave flexibility on this. So if you see in the text, the definition of what we, in the topic we have considered a territorial cluster, is a cluster that should include a geographically cohesive territory, for example, a group of neighboring cities, peri-urban, etc., or territories that are linked by a systemic solution. This territory is not limited by national boundaries. So in principle, the answer is yes. So it can be between different member states. The idea is just to see really image a cluster where a circular solution can be implemented in the best way. It can be also, of course, cross member states. Yes. Then maybe I can also take the second question.
Yes.
Marquez is asking about should all stakeholders suggesting the topic be included as partner in the project, or can they be involved without being partners? Again, flexibility. We included examples of stakeholders that they can be really part of the cluster and can be also receive the support from outside. So we really try to leave as much as possible flexibility, because the philosophy behind is the following one. We don't want to impose from here specific criteria, especially when you go at the regional and local scale, which is can really meet different characteristics across Europe. So this flexibility allows to address these differences in a flexible way, in terms of how big the cluster can be, how can it be distributed, what are the key actors. So you can find also in the text of the topic a quite high level of flexibility on this.
And the following question is somehow related to the previous one. So the idea is to develop one territorial concept cluster replicated in different regions, or is the idea to develop different kinds of territorial cluster, which is the demonstrated in certain context? So it's again about the cluster and the replication of cluster.
Yeah, and then if you see, I really suggest to see at the very beginning of the scope in the text of the topic, that you see that the definition of territorial cluster for this topic, and you see how the demonstration should be a proposal expected to implement and demonstrate circular systemic solution for the territorial deployment of the circular economy in one circular territorial cluster. Again, one circular territorial cluster, but then we expect not only one proposal. So the way just to have one proposal focusing maximizing the resources, the energy, if you want, in one territorial cluster, but this territorial cluster should really communicate and cooperate among each other, plus with the Circular Cities and Regions initiative to really, make it bigger, this exchange of information, not only within the project proposal and cluster within this topic, but also beyond.
Okay, so The next question is about actors. So what is an actor in the context of circular territorial cluster definition?
Well, an actor can be considered here a synonym of stakeholder, someone that has to be part of the project in terms of contributing to the implementation. Say the definition is quite, again, maybe flexible, but let's consider a synonymous of a stakeholder.
Thank you, Andrea. So does a systemic solution only mean to consider the broader context and follow a cross-sectoral approach? Or should proposal apply methods of systems thinking and system dynamics?
Well, again, going back to the flexibility that on purpose this topic is aiming at and is included, I guess you're flexible on this point. Again, with the philosophy to really avoid to be too specific, too prescriptive, as we are aiming at the regional and local level, and the differences are quite significant. The skills, the competencies, the formal competencies are quite significant. So this is the reason of the flexibility. So to answer your question is really up to the proposal to present a good proposal for a concrete and effective circular solution, to be systemic in a way that you can include different actors, different sector, if possible, and different dimension of this circular solution.
Okay, and the next question is about, again, the 3 countries. So how can we involve at least 3 countries when we focus on a single cluster per project? And I guess this is something related to the definition of cluster. So maybe you can clarify the definition of cluster and the link to regions.
Yeah, so it's a little bit, exactly the definition of the cluster that is included in the topic, which can be also, of course, not focused just on one country, but also other countries. But again, here the idea is just to, of course, this topic has significant resources budget-wise to demonstrate. Is bigger than maybe other cases of grants for demonstration in the similar area. But at the same time, the philosophy is just to really focus on one circular territorial cluster and to have all the resources in this proposal in this territorial cluster.
Yeah, and I guess you clarified already the following question about the location of the different demos and the cluster. So this is already clarified. What is the role of CCRI? Is twinning sufficient by cooperation, or do we need to include more than one cluster in a project?
No, the role of the CCRI is really, well, we are setting up now the initiative, but one of the roles is definitely to try to facilitate the cooperation, the synergy, complementarity between different projects, starting from the proposal coming out from this topic. And twinning, why not, can be one of the activities that can be considered. But again, we are leaving flexibility about how to translate into reality this cooperation. And well, we need to include more than one cluster in a project. In theory, is one project, as we said, one cluster. But again, the idea is just to that this cluster, the different circular solution, then they can cooperate and communicate between each other. And also through the CCRI, also with other actors and stakeholder beyond this topic, we circular ambition, let's call it this.
I see that this topic is still highlighted in the next question. So should each proposal under this call be submitted by a consortium of stakeholders of one territorial cluster, such as a group of neighboring cities or a large urban areas, or should multiple territorial clusters throughout Europe and the individual stakeholders of these different clusters unite in one proposal?
Well, we are going back to, I guess, to the definition of cluster again that is included in the topic.
And yeah, if I may also add, I think it is important, as also highlighted in the presentation of my colleagues on implementation aspects, that of course all the stakeholders which are involved in the proposed solutions are there since the start of the projects, and they bring their expertise, which is needed to really implement the proposed innovation.
And maybe the next question is interesting, I would say. If I may, Stefania,
Sure.
Is the fact related to the link with the circular economy action plan at the regional, I would say also at the local level. Well, that's of course is not mandatory. If you see in the sentence in the topic is the following. So ideally, each cluster should have a circular economy action plan, CEP, in which the proposed systemic solution is embedded. So it's ideally, so it's not mandatory. And the idea behind to consider it a sort of, let's say, added value or a positive point is that if you have a clear idea in your cluster, a clear action plan, a circular economy action plan, where this, so it means that you have a clear idea what you want to reach, how you want to organize, maybe how you want to monitor your improvement. And if you already have this structural approach and your circular solution is included in it or can be included in it, that's of course something which is a good point to start to achieve the expected impact that we explained before. But again, it is not mandatory. We know that there are no all the potential cluster with a clear circular economy action plan. So it is not a big deal without a circular economy action plan. Of course, is something more that you have to, of course, to explain in the proposal, that you already have a plan, a clear idea where to go and how. Then of course is something that is good.
And the following question is also quite related to cluster and territorial cluster. So if you don't mind, we can skip it and we can go to the next. What is the requirement for a regional circular economy action plan? Does it necessarily cover the whole region, territory of the cluster?
Yeah, is again flexibility on this. So we talk about the circular economy action plan. Let's say ideally is not mandatory. So if it's there and is let's say demonstrated to be an added value in terms of planning, etc., of course is something good, but it is again is not mandatory. So that's a little bit the philosophy behind. And maybe also the other, Stefani, if I may, because that's also another important point, that the next question related to include only one key value chain in the project, or is recommended to address more than one. The topic is talk about a systemic solution, meaning try to describe with the flexibility a little bit what we consider with this systemic solution. Systemic in terms of types of different actors included, type of different dimension included, type of different specificity, for example, including governance systems, including industry, including the academia, etc. So in principle, it is not a problem. Just only one value chain is part of the circular solution that can also include a symbiosis of different economic sector within one circular solution. Again, is this flexibility that allows in the philosophy of the topic to be flexible enough to really target the innovation at the local level. That can be in one value chain, can be in different value chain, different economic sectors, etc.
The next question, I think we answered this.
Yeah, maybe a question from Camille related to ideally each cluster should have a circular economy action plan in which the proposed system solution is embedded. So are these SEA part of the CCRI? How to liaise with the CCRI when it is not fully operational? And one other activities found in Green Deal call is for its implementation. So we are really working on to setting up the coordination unit of the CCRI in the following weeks or months. I would say weeks, more than months. And this unit is the scope will be really to try to facilitate this cooperation and coordination on this. Having said that, you can find in the website of the GRTD of the initiative on Circular Cities and Regions initiative, the first information about this coordination and support office. So you can find the criteria, and they're also answering your question. So in principle, SEAP are not part of the CCRI. SEAP can be part of the Territorial Cluster, but the circular solution, their implementation are really instruments, crucial instrument, demonstration instrument, ready for the implementation of the entire initiative, which will be implemented through specific demonstration projects where there is one overall unit, the coordination support office, really try to facilitate the cooperation, coordination, and synergy between these projects.
Question is also related to eligibility conditions somehow. So it's asking, would it be possible to have a territorial cluster within an associated country, for instance, Switzerland? Yes, the answer is yes. As I said before, so it is compulsory to have at least 3 legal entities, being member states or associated countries of Horizon 2020. Next question. Is it essential that the cluster has a circular economy action plan already in place before the start of the project?
Well, we are going back to the sentence. We use the adverb ideally. So it's not that if you don't have as a territorial cluster a circular economy action plan, then is bad. No, not at all. It is a way that if you can demonstrate that you already have clear in your mind as a cluster what you want to do, where you want to go, how you want to achieve your target, that's of course is something which I would say is quite important. But this can be a SEAP, can be something else, can be a clear idea in the proposal. So is really ideal, but doesn't mean that is mandatory or something is not a must, let's say.
Okay, next question is related to a project focusing on one territory. But you mentioned knowledge transfer between territories, regions, cities is encouraged. So other regions, cities can be in the project as learners.
Again, on this, I would say it's up to you to present a good proposal. We really included in the expected impact that this knowledge transfer, as you said, is quite crucial. This is what we need if we want to demonstrate, if we want to implement and facilitate the replication of concrete circular solution. Then the knowledge is crucial, especially if we go beyond a classical circular economy in waste and wastewater sector. So the idea is just how this transfer of technology can be done is really, I would say, up to the proposal to demonstrate the best option to do so, considering the background also a sort of a multiplier, amplificator, which is going to be the entire initiative, Circular Cities and Regions. The scope is really try to facilitate this transfer of knowledge, not only within the actors of a cluster, not only between the different proposals, but also beyond what this topic can finance and can do. So if I hope I answer your question. And then I leave you, Stefania, maybe the other question.
Yes, so as this area 3 is about industry, can we assume that not only territorial systemic models are to be developed, but most of all industrial value chains aiming at recycling and winning alternative resources for their process? Is that right?
Yeah, can be. Basically here, maybe it's better to explain like this. So the focus of this topic is really systemic. considering a system, what we define this territorial cluster, where you have different actors. RFA is, of course, about industry. This topic is also about industry, but industry is not the only actor at the territorial level, especially with this territorial systemic approach. So indeed, there is why we included a non-complete, but I would say quite clear list of potential actors, which are going, of course, from industry, but also administrations, can include citizens, of course, can include NGOs, can include philanthropies, for example. Let's say to include who are the key actors for a circular solution, aim at increase the circularity in a certain territory, and going back to this approach of circular economy, which should be sustainable, regenerative, just, and inclusive. So it's not only industry. Industry, of course, can be a key actor, but it's not the only one. Again, keep in mind this systemic approach, I would say.
So the next question is about are artificial intelligence, cybersecurity, and blockchain also included in the solutions which are considered systemic?
I would say it's up to the proposal to include it and to demonstrate that is a good idea.
Yeah.
So again, we are going back to this flexibility to really try to demonstrate the best is possible in terms of innovation and in terms of concrete demonstration of solution that has a quite high level of replicability and scalability. If you see, maybe that's another important point. What we're asking here with this topic, the final TRL, technology readiness level, is 6, 7, so it's quite high, but it's an area where we really push for something that is able to be demonstrated in one place and replicate in some other places. And this is the reason why we included in the expected impact this level of not only visibility of the circular solution, but also this level of replicability and scalability. So if you think, for example, going back to the Lara Valentin question, if you think that artificial intelligence, blockchain, or whatever is one of the key to do so, then consider it in the proposal and demonstrate it.
Then there is a question on how many partners are recommended for this kind of topic, 20 or 30?
Yeah, that's definitely the flexibility that I think is intelligent to give to the proposal, because we cannot imagine from here or from I don't know where to say 10 is better than 20, or no, it's really the flexibility. And you have to demonstrate, I was saying, the proposal to say with 3 actors, with 20 actors, I want to do this circular solution, which is the best one, and I want to achieve these expected impacts in this way within this time. It's really, I would say, part of the proposal, and it's part also what we want to learn from here, to see how a circular solution in the difference, reality of Europe can be demonstrated and replicated. So it's up to the proposal.
Yeah, and as was also mentioned during the presentation before from the agency, so the number is just not a number. So the number of partners, it doesn't mean that the higher the number of partners, the better, but all the involved partners, they have to be really key, and they have to demonstrate a valid role within the proposed solution. Then there is a question again, so about participant. Can participant partners outside of the target territorial cluster? So the question, if I understand correctly, is can partners from outside the territorial cluster take part in the consortium?
Well, it's again up to the proposal, but I would say even before to identify who are the actors, and again in the list that you can find in the topic text, this list is not non-complete at all. It's just some example, but the scope is really to give this idea to be systemic, not just only look into the pure industrial side of the story or to the pure governance side of the circular solution, but really be systemic in this way and in the type and number of actors that can be involved in the circular solution.
Could technologies addressing increase of the lifetime, valorizing secondary materials from recycling, repairing, be included in the concept of circular economy, or should be limited, or should the focus be limited just to recycling technologies?
No, I would say circular economy in general. So circular solution meaning circular economy from A to Z. So not only the recycling or not only valorization, which can be actually part of the recycling. So it's really a circular economy approach in toto, if you want to speak in Latin, for the circular solution. So all the parts of the circular economy.
So then there is a question about importance of volume of waste treated versus the importance of the design of the systemic solution itself. In our case, we are thinking of recovering bio-waste or bioresources from rural areas, but we have doubts about the volumes of waste treated. So the question is, to what extent is the looking for this type of systemic solution or giving greater priority to large numbers? So it's a matter of volumes of waste included in the concept and in the proposal. How probably this is important and key for this kind of topic?
Well, I would say it's up to the proposal to demonstrate whether quality or quantity is the key indicator for the circular solution. Is the flexibility that we give with this topic to proposal. So it's really up to the proposal to demonstrate that, again, this is the circular solution to be financed.
Then there is a question about the presentation. Yes, it will be shared as all the presentations during the RNI days, and the recording will be also available under the website.
Yeah, and if I may say also, consider that in the presentation you have hyperlinks, for example, to the CCR website, to the Circular City Funding Guide, to the study that I mentioned, to see if I want to increase the circular bioeconomy in the territory, what are the EU regulation, including, some aspect of the regulation helping or not really helping the circularity of bioresources. So this presentation also includes the link to further information.
Okay. Yes, we have the last 5 minutes. I guess we have answered most of the questions. And as I said, please also put your specific questions under the funding and tenders portal so that we can address the answers and this will be available to all potential applicants. So I guess we can close shortly.
Yeah.
Andrea?
So I can really thanks for your question and time. I hope we answer your question, and yeah, then again, there is a way to continue this question through the portal. And I hope that this presentation was useful, and also this exchange of question and answer was quite useful for you. And thank you for your time.
Yes,
and thank you,
you.
Stefania.
Thank you again, and wish you all the success in this proposal preparation.